Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. My name is B. Cronin, and I am the Sunday Associate this morning. It is good to be with you. Unitarian Universalism is a religion of covenant. We promise to be with one another with compassion and curiosity, pursuing our best selves and working to create the most just and joyful world we can. We share a belief in our interconnections, in the value of intentional and authentic living, and in love that can transform people and the world. I'm so sorry. Ours is a religion that asks us to think beyond ourselves, embracing a wide circle of theologies and viewpoints. The Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has long been and will be for generations to come a haven for humanists, a home for the spiritual, an abode for the believer, a refuge for atheists, a sanctuary for the seeker. Here we support each other on our journeys, lifting up our differences, leaning into our commonalities, thank you, and learning to love better each and every day. Welcome here to this special place. If you're new, we do hope you will fill out a green sheet if you're here in Anderson. And if you are on Zoom, please click through and fill out the Google form that will be linked in the chat. This morning, we will have our normal coffee breakout rooms on Zoom, and here in Anderson, we'll have our in-person coffee hour. There's also a special event in Fellowship down the hall. If you're attending that, you can just head right through. This is specifically for families. As we begin our service, I say again, welcome. Please join us in the words for lighting the chalice, then take a breath and center yourself with the ringing tone of our singing bowl.
We light this chalice
for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community.
If you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes as you listen to the singing bowl, and I encourage you to listen to it until it completely fades away, until you can hear it no more. It goes on for much longer than you think it does.
Ron asked me to say some words to begin this service. I believe the message for today is captured in a poem by Ukrainian poet Ilya Kaminsky. When facing the blank wall that is crisis, everyone needs a bit of music, a tune, and balm. And that's what we will receive today, a bit of music, a tune, and balm in the form of poetry, caring, and a sharing of our hearts. We look forward to hearing Ron's student, Sofiya Doroshenko, play the Impromptu by Franz Schubert and share from her heart about her Ukrainian family. Ron will be joined by Kristen Plumley to offer two songs by Mykola Lysenko, the father of Ukrainian classical music, and we'll hear Pleve Kacha, or The Duckling Swims, a Ukrainian folk song associated with the Maidan freedom movement and the war in Ukraine. The lyrics are a dialogue between a mother and a son going off to war. Thanks today also for graphics to Carol Wolf and to B. Cronin for reading. Above all, thank you, Ron, for organizing this special service. I've learned that when something happens or someone says or does something that hurts, if you have no other words, you can say, ouch. But how loud and how long would that ouch need to be? Our hearts respond to the horrible suffering of the people of Ukraine that we encounter every day in the news. It is unspeakable what they're going through. And perhaps we also feel compassion for some of the soldiers in the invading army who are there against their will, conscripted by poverty or coercion. Our sense of justice is outraged by what appear to be war crimes committed at the behest of the leaders of the aggression. We may feel a bit of irony when we realize that Russia doesn't recognize the International Criminal Court, and neither does Ukraine, nor the United States of America. But the people of the world can see what's happening and have already passed judgment. Still, I am confused about what to say. I am a conscientious objector. I'm convinced that war is never the answer. And perhaps some of you share my ambivalence about the power of our military-industrial corporations. You may say that I'm a dreamer. I know it's complicated. But Unitarian Universalists join the parliament of the world's religions in condemning the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign democracy, as a violation of human rights, freedom, justice, and peace. We mourn the lives lost and the continued suffering of those involved in the invasion, including those who remain in Ukraine and those displaced by the invasion. We ask that the human rights and humanity of all refugees and displaced persons in this crisis be respected and upheld, regardless of their country of origin. And as UUs who affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, we grieve today for all that is lost in Ukraine.
Please join in our hymn, number 159. It's This My Song. The words will be on your screen.
One of the promises we make to each other in our shared covenant at USR is to support this congregation with our presence, gifts, and service, and to care for each other and the long-term well-being of our community. We commit to tending to each other, tending to this world we share. This is the time in our service when we put that promise into action by reminding each other that we share a vision of justice and freedom for this world, and that it will take all our different talents, gifts, and support to make that vision a reality. This morning, one announcement is that we are working on kickstarting our caring team again. This is the group that does everything from providing rides to services for those who can no longer drive, to sending cards when folks have exciting or challenging life events, to providing trained listening ears and support. If you are interested in being part of the caring team, one of the central aspects of our congregational life, please contact Reverend Sarah, or you can fill out a form with Georgetta Walsh, who's sitting right there. We also uphold our covenant by our annual and weekly giving. This month, our offering plate will be split between the congregation and the Citizens for Swimming organization. Since the 1960s, the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has supported programs in our neighboring town of Paterson. Citizens for Swimming, a program of Camp YDP Paterson, provides children 9 days of water fun in Ridgewood's local pool, as well as swimming lessons by the YMCA swim instructors. Help give city kids much-needed summer heat relief and invaluable skills for water safety. Citizens for Swimming depends on monetary donations to cover the cost of busing and discounted swimming badges. Please give generously.
It's now a time for meditation. I invite you to get as comfortable as you can. Close your eyes if it feels right to you. And just take a moment to breathe in deeply and easily. Breathe in and let it out gently. Let's do that again. Breathe in and let it out gently. I'm going to recite a Hindu prayer that is used at many different occasions and events. I happen to use it in a yoga class that I take. It is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which translates to, may all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and that freedom for all. I'm going to chant this 3 times. If you are familiar with it, please join in. And at the end, I will give a final Om, which is the universal sound of peace. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om.
Ilya Kaminsky, writer and poet, was born in Odessa, Ukraine. He now lives in Atlanta. He writes, typically for me, April, which is National Poetry Month, means traveling to poetry readings and social gatherings with fellow poets, celebrating the art form we dedicate our lives to. But this year is different. As the Russian war against Ukraine rages on, April is indeed the cruelest month. A Ukrainian friend writes about spending whole nights in Kyiv subway stations, which are being used as bomb shelters, reciting poems to herself and those around her to keep sane. When she grows tired, she starts translating those poems into other languages, just as a way of keeping going. Critics in the West often ask whether poetry matters. I now realize that the only valid response to this question is, do such critics matter? If a person sheltering deep underground as her city is bombed recites poems as a survival tool to soothe herself and others, that is all the evidence I need that poetry matters. But we humans knew that. Letters of the alphabet go to war, clinging to one another, standing up, forming words no one wants to shout, sentences that are blown by the mines in the avenues, stories shelled by multiple rocket launches. So writes Ukrainian poet Leszek Panasuk, who lost his home in Bucha. Russian soldiers occupied his house, Leszek tells me. He says the same young soldiers invaded Chernobyl before coming to Bucha, having no idea of the disaster that unfolded there more than 35 years ago. No one told them what they were heading into, Leszek tells me. Because the young soldiers brought very high levels of radiation with them from Chernobyl into Lessek's Bucha house, it is no longer habitable. It is surreal, the situation. In the middle of the ransacked city of Bucha stands a house whose owners cannot return to it because of radiation, an invisible war that still lives in those rooms long after the soldiers are gone. How can poetry describe something like this? How can language speak of a country that's bombarded while the rest of the world looks on? T.S. Eliot was right. April is the cruelest month. And poetry now is as necessary as ever, not because it is pretty and fancy, but because it helps us to articulate the most impossible moments. It gives us a gasp, a scrap of air in our lungs. When we have nothing else, we can still hold a handful of words in our memory, a tune, and that might be all we have got now to survive. We don't know yet. But if we are lucky, it is there. Keep it safe, this verbal music. Memorize new line poems if you can. You might need them one day, warplanes or not. When facing the blank wall that is crisis, everyone needs a bit of music, a tune, a balm.
Ever since the day that Ukraine was invaded, I've been grieving. I've been grieving for the citizens of Ukraine. I've been grieving for humanity. And personally, I've been grieving because Ukraine is one of the countries that my ancestors come from. And I wanted to do something, we all feel so helpless, but I wanted to do something that was an expression of all of our grief, and that was a little bit of a palliative for me emotionally. So I will always be grateful for many, many people that contributed to today's service, their talents, their expertise. I'm sure I can speak for all of us, and we're all very grateful. Right now, it gives me incredible personal pleasure to introduce my beloved piano student, Sofiya Doroshenko, and her family is from Ukraine, and I am so honored that she was able to be with us with her mother, Ilya, and she is displaying great personal courage. Most of their family is in Ukraine right now, and of course this is a very uncertain time for the family. But she's going to play a piece by Schubert, which I thought was particularly appropriate. This is one of Schubert's last pieces, but it's not really that passive or resigned. It kind of rails against, it's kind of an existential piece and shows great strength. And also, Sofiya is showing great strength and courage for being agreeing to be with us this morning. At the conclusion of her performance, she also has prepared a few words to address to you, and I'll accompany her on the podium while she speaks to you. But please give a warm welcome for Sofiya.
First off, I want to thank everyone for inviting us today. I can speak for the whole Ukrainian community when I say that we are immensely grateful for all the support the Ukrainians have been receiving. Your help is what gives us hope that we can win, that the people responsible can be put to justice, and that the citizens of Ukraine can have their whole realities destroyed by something that no one should have to go through, and that they can get their lives back. I was born and lived in Ivano-Frankivsk, one of the large cities on the west of Ukraine. I remember that city as being beautiful, with painstakingly crafted architecture, the bustle of life at every corner, with the chatter of old friends seeing each other, with the joy and happiness of people simply living life. All of that was wiped out in one night, February 24th, 2022. One person and the barbarians that he commands were able to destroy the lives of millions of people. Our family and friends are currently living through that new reality. There are sirens that they hear every day and night, warning them that these could be the last moments that they are together. Ukrainians have a long, wonderful culture and identity, and that is under attack, like the nation of Ukraine. We hope and pray that there are peace-loving Russians who have been tragically misled by propaganda. However, like the evil mythology of the Third Reich, the horribly false idea that Ukrainians aren't a real people and that Ukrainian nationhood is an artificial construct has long been mainstreamed in Russia. An article in this week's Wall Street Journal analyzed the Russian hostility to Ukrainian aspirations in Russian culture, literature, and politics. At a reading in 1992, less than a year into Ukraine's long-sought existence as an independent nation, a young poet in the Soviet Union, Joseph Brodsky, offered a new poem titled To the Independence of Ukraine. Brodsky went on to predict that when what he described as ungrateful Ukrainians were wheezing on their deathbeds, they would surely revert to reciting the verse of the classic Russian poet Alexander Pushkin rather than the lies of their own national poet, Taras Shevchenko. The article goes on to describe the specific negative depictions of Ukraine in Russian politics and in its culture. Not all, but many Russians have been raised with propaganda to have a hostile view of Ukraine. Some of them denied the existence of Ukraine as a people, denied the fact that Ukrainians have their own identity, own language, own traditions. In 2014, Putin went as far as to seize Crimea. It happened right after Ukrainian protesters in Kiev went against the pro-Russian President Yanukovych, who has destroyed the country's policy towards integration with the European Union and wanted to create a tie with Russia instead. My grandmother, a doctor, lives in Ukraine and wants to stay for those who need her help due to Russia's brutality. My other family member, also a doctor who remains in Ukraine, told me that he goes to work and the Russians are shooting. He goes home from work and they're still shooting. How much more do Ukrainian people have to suffer to have their long-sought freedom, to have a right to something that every person is born with? This war has turned bustling cities into deserted ruins. This war echoes the silence of killed people. This war leaves children without families or anyone to care for them. How many people have been trapped, tortured, or killed? How many people had to hide in the safety of shadows for weeks to avoid the savageness of Russian troops? Ukrainians defend their freedom to live, to love, to for once be able to live freely in our land. We are fighting Russia, which brings horrible silence with its bombs. Help fill the silence with life again. Support us in any way you can, as you have already been doing. And then peace will come. To all our cities the war is destroying, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Volvohaka, Bucha, Mariupol, and others, they are legends already. But I have a dream of them living and being free. Free like you, sitting before me. Thank you so much.
That was very powerful. Thanks, Sophie. Good morning. You might be surprised to discover the richness and variety of Ukrainian art. Many of us are familiar with the beautiful decorative folk art of Ukraine, including embroidery, wood carving, ceramics, weaving, and those gorgeous fancy eggs we see at Easter time. But through the centuries, Ukrainian artists have also made profound contributions in religious art, painting, and printmaking. In fact, Kiev was considered one of Eastern Europe's leading art centers during the Byzantine period. This morning, I'd like to share with you the work by two contemporary Ukrainian printmakers, Sergey Udovichenko and Konstantin Kalinovich. These fascinating surrealist etchings are incredibly intricate. The details are so small that special magnifying lenses were used to create the plates. Here is one of the prints, just so you can get an idea of scale. Ron will accompany the slideshow with a piece by Sergey Prokofiev. Thank you, Ron.
Ron and I will now perform two pieces written by Mykola Lysenko with poetry by Mykola Correct me on my pronunciation there. The first is Should Only Roses Bloom. Should only roses bloom? Should only swallows sing? Can happiness only come by repeating a former spring? Is it only in my family home that I can sing my fate? Is it wrong for a bird in springtime to fly free for even a day? Do birds abandon their nests the moment the chicks have left? Aren't there flowers that wait till fall to grow their colorful blooms? Often there comes a moment so bright, its importance far greater than years, that even in the ice of a resurrected heart, the warm rays of spring can shine through.
believe in beauty. I bow before it. It governs everything in the universe. Happiness is beauty, and beauty is happiness. There is no limit, no boundary between them. In a worrisome time, I live in the hope that in the tiniest of slender grains, a great force is hidden. It will resurrect from beneath the snow in spring. This force that feeds us all and fills the world with motion, that's more powerful than reason and warms the blood in our veins. I wish to give it away, this ancient force, to those who lack strength and happiness, to those who weep and suffer. To them I give my love.
As I said at the beginning, this is complicated, and yet we find solace in our confusion by sharing what we have today. We have honored Ukraine, and we will continue to do so in the days ahead, especially in the urgently longed-for days of peace that must come soon. We will remember the people and places whose devastation have so touched our hearts. We will not forget. Of course, we know that these are not the only utterly inhuman atrocities happening in the world today. And so, with gratitude for the hope that a vision of peace gives us, and as we honor Ukraine, may our shared pain with them make us more compassionate toward all the earth and everything that lives upon it. So may it be.
Please join in the words for extinguishing the chalice. They're on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again.